episode 109 of the Inside the Mind podcast. And I'm super pumped to be joined by Kelsey Mitchell, who probably has kind of one of the more unique meteoric rises in Olympic sports. I mean, going from 2 years from just starting out in the sport to being a world record holder. And I'm just curious, kind of, because life gets very busy, life gets very fast, and 2 years to some people seems like a lot of time, but I think maybe in the moment it kind of flashes by. Have you had opportunities to kind of sit back and just really reflect on the past 2, 3, 4 years in cycling?
I guess, yeah, the past year I was able to take a breath and kind of be like, whoa, I've come a long way from the first time I tried a track bike, that's for sure. Yeah, it was a crazy couple years, just go, racing all over the world and just trying to get points towards qualifying for the Olympics. And so, yeah, gaining that extra year to look back and just kind of appreciate how far I've come has been good.
I think that's so important because, like I was kind of referencing a bit, a lot of people lose sight on that and it's just go. And I think it's kind of like America and Canada, like the Western world, kind of like that go mentality of working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And you compare it to like, Europe or Asia or whatever, where it might not be that kind of same busy lifestyle. They take that time to relax, take that time for families. And that's just something that I've kind of been trying to do more often, is when I plan out my days, not to fill up every minute of the day with something to do, like leave those gaps to actually like enjoy my time and just reflect and just enjoy the process, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. That's smart. Good call with doing that. Enjoying the process is definitely key. You have the end goal or end target, and if you just focus on that, you kind of miss the little victories that you get daily or weekly. So yeah, taking that time to look back and reflect on your daily achievements, even getting up and going for a run like you did this morning, like that's awesome. Or, just little things like that. I think people definitely forget to do.
I was listening to one of the other podcasts you did. I think it was the Velodrome podcast. I don't know if I got that podcast name correct or wrong, but it said Velodrome podcast on Instagram, so I'll run with that. But you talked about your when you first started training with the national team. So I know that you started off in the RBC, I guess the intake process or whatever, the camp is the word I'm looking for. And then it's a big jump from that to obviously train with the national team. And I think you had mentioned in that podcast that maybe some feelings of being over your head and over your head during that process. So I'm just intrigued kind of how you defined, or what it felt to be in over your head. And in number two, how you eventually were able to overcome that.
Yeah, I had joined or fully committed to track cycling in December 2017. And so from then till May, I was kind of just figuring out the bike. And it's like a fixed gear in the velodrome. You're going 60 plus kilometers an hour. And I just hadn't ridden a bike in a while. I had never done that sport. So the learning curve was huge. And so I got asked to come and train with the national team in May. And I was messing up people's warm-ups. I was not knowing how to change the gear on my bike. I was always asking for help. And I hated asking for help. I hated being bad at things. And it wasn't from lack of trying, because I was going all out and doing my best, but I just wasn't there yet. And so I think it was very frustrating, obviously, in the moment, but it just pushed me that much more, because after the month camp, I went back home for a month, and I just saw how big the gap was between me and the national team. And so I saw my target, I saw my goal, and I was just trying to close that gap. So I guess it definitely motivated me even more, just seeing how good they were and how far I had to go still.
Yeah. So when you surround yourself with champions like that and Olympic athletes, that's kind of like where that growth mindset just kind of rubs off naturally. That's why I always like to bring up the point there's a million different ways to say it, but the way I like to say it is you're the average of like your five closest friends type of thing. And so when you surround yourself with that kind of group, inevitably they're going to raise you up. But on the flip side, if you surround yourself with 5, 10, 15 people that maybe don't have that growth mindset, don't have that ambition, don't have that initiative, then there's the potential for them to drag you down.
100%. I 100% agree with that. You are who you surround yourself with. And so be very cautious and pick wisely, because if you're around people that motivate you and you inspire to be more like, then keep hanging out with them. And on the other side of it, if people are fine with how they are and just kind of coasting through life, that's going to rub off on you. And so having good teammates and a good support system around you will make or break you for sure.
And when you were mentioning beginning at the national team, it kind of made me think about, I've experienced this to some degree as well. I know a lot of people have as well, but when you start something new and you start messing up or you ruin like other people's warm-ups, like you said, like there's almost a sense of like feeling guilty and like feeling embarrassment, right? And that's one thing that I don't know if there's really a perfect answer to get through that other than just toughing it out. Like it's gonna, like I think there comes a realization that the first bit sucks and there's inevitably levels to this. And when you start out, it might be impractical to believe that your level is going to be at the same level as somebody that's been there 10, 15 years. But it's definitely something that I've struggled with myself, just feeling guilty. It's such a weird feeling that, you know, you're trying something new, you're trying your best, but then you feel guilty because you're messing other people up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you just have to remind yourself that everyone started at the ground level at one point. And, you know, if you're giving your best and trying to improve and people can see that, they're going to want to help you, or they're going to understand that if you mess up your warm up, you didn't do it on purpose. And so, yeah, I definitely felt guilty and out of place and was apologizing a lot to people for cutting them off or, you know, just throwing them off. But yeah, people understand. And if you are giving your best and just trying to get better, then people see it and will forgive you.
Yeah, that's where being Canadian comes in, apologizing so much. Yeah, I feel like it's just sorry is just part of, like, I say sorry just randomly throughout the day for things I need to do.
Yeah, every other word that comes out. Yeah,
that's where it comes into handy.
Yeah.
And even too, when you were saying that, it made me think that, you know, everyone's timeline is different. I think that's an important concept for people to understand, because some people might hear kind of your timeline going from 2017, just starting out in the sport, to 2019 Pan Am medalist and world record holder. You know, some people, they might have that perception that that's like, if they don't make that goal within 2 years, then they're a failure. But there's obviously so many people out there that take longer than 2 years, and probably the flip side take shorter than 2 years. It's just about understanding everyone's timeline is different, and there's no such thing as a perfect timeline. It's like I like to say, it's like nobody's timeline is perfect. The only timeline that's perfect is a timeline that works for you.
Yeah. My old coach from Edmonton always tells me, I was one of the worst and best things to happen to track cycling, as in people can see that you can start at a later age and have great success with it. But he has athletes that he coaches that will compare their numbers to mine and be like, well, I've been doing it for 2 years and she was only doing it for 1 and blah, blah, blah. But like, everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's on their own path. And like, I was a more mature athlete when I joined. So I maybe had a different mindset than some of the younger, or I was just more developed physically, like power wise. And so maybe that's why it was so quick. But yeah, totally. Everyone is going to be on their own journey and have their own ups and downs. And, you know, I don't talk a whole lot about the downs. You don't really broadcast that as much as your successes, right. But there are definitely ups and downs throughout the journey. And I think everyone's going to deal with it. And so, yeah, that's just kind of, yeah, everyone's on their own path.
Exactly. Was there, because obviously starting at such like the bottom of the sport, so to say, and then reaching the pinnacle of the sport, like being a world record holder, there comes a time where that transition kind of switches. Like, I'm thinking of myself, if I was in your shoes, I would go into it and I start feeling really guilty, really embarrassed, like I'm messing up. And then in 2 years, like I'm a world record holder, you're almost like at the top of the sport, right? Just talk me through like kind of what that feels like, that transition from being kind of a beginner / amateur in the sport to somebody that people look up to. Because for me, that would just be like really, really weird.
Yeah, it was just such a steep learning curve. I think back to like my first races and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of out there, and like the coach was just like, do your best and like don't fall off the track kind of, and like keep pedaling because right. You know, don't stop or you'll fall. And my natural competitiveness just kicked in, and I was going to do whatever I could to pass the line first. And I probably did it the hardest way possible, and so I would really struggle between rounds and stuff. And even now I'm still learning the tactics of the sport, the technical aspects of it. And I still have so much more to learn and grow. And so even if I am, you know, in top 10 in the world right now, I still have the mindset that I need to keep learning. I need to keep growing. I need to get stronger. I'm not the top in the world. And even if one day I do get there, someone's going to want to take that spot. And so I just kind of will always have the mindset to like keep busting my ass and going all in every single day to try and get better. I didn't really answer your question there, but yeah, it's been weird, and I still feel like I'm learning. So when I'm on the line from my first race ever to maybe at the Olympics, I'll be like, just do your best, give your best on that day, and try and cross the line first is the bottom line. So
what does strategy look like, or tactics look like in track cycling? Because I think from an outside perspective, it's probably a naive perspective, but to just an amateur watching, it just looks like cycling around the track, right? There's an
you just pedal hard, turn left. Yeah.
But what are like the actual like strategies and tactics that you try and implement throughout a race?
So my favorite race is the match sprint. So it's 1v1, first one, 3 laps, and first one across the line wins. But there's a lot of drafting involved, and like using the track, and whether you're in the front or the back. If your strength is a longer sprint versus a shorter explosive sprint, you just have to race to your strengths and against trying your weaknesses beat their weaknesses. You do a 200 meter to like rank who you'll race against, and like the fastest will race the slowest, and blah, blah, blah. But there's people that qualify significantly slower, beating someone who is significantly faster. It's just they have more experience with racing or better tactically. So it's a pretty cool sport. I didn't know anything about it beforehand, but like obviously I'm super into it now. And I'm just learning every time I'm on the track and making mistakes and learning from them. And so like my strengths is more so long sprints, so I kind of get the speed going quick, where other people will maybe try and like track stand and slow down the race to keep it slow. But yeah, there's a lot of tactics that go into it that I'm still learning.
And I'm intrigued too, just because my unfamiliarity with the sport, but what is the difference between a track cyclist bike and just a bike that I can go to like Canadian Tire and purchase and just ride down the street? Like there's obviously differences, but what are like the nitty gritty differences? Because I know it's not just riding a bike and pedaling.
Yeah, the main difference is it's a fixed gear. So there's one gear on the bike. You're stuck in that gear, so choose wisely. And it's fixed, so as long as the bike is moving, you're still pedaling. And there's no brakes. So to come to a stop, you kind of use air resistance to slow you down, and you can like pedal, like slow your pedal stroke down. But those are kind of the main differences. And obviously the bikes we're riding are like carbon, super light, stiff, really expensive. Cycling is a very expensive sport. Those are kind of the main differences between a regular road bike that you can get.
And it being expensive adds to like being guilty when you mess up. And not only are you messing other people up, but you're costing Canada money, right? Because those are cheap bikes. Yeah.
When you crash, you say, "Is the bike okay?" That's your first instinct.
Bike first, Kelsey second.
Yeah. I'm fine. Check the bike. Yeah.
And when you say fixed gear, is everyone in the same gear, or are there like tactics and strategies based on what gear you choose?
Yeah, so that's part of it too. You toss on a massive gear, it takes a while to get it going, but you can maybe hold the higher end speed for longer versus smaller gear that you can jump and get it going quick, but you'll be completely spun out by the end. So the sport's definitely moving to larger gears. Back in the day, people were doing like 150 RPMs, like their legs were just spinning away like crazy. And now it's quite like the gears are massive. It's insane. Right. Yeah.
It's insane. You mentioned a couple minutes ago, kind of the process of still getting better, still improving. And it reminded me of I think a quote that you had said before in one of the news articles that I read, that you define success as reaching your potential. It's not all about winning in medals, right? But I'm just intrigued kind of currently, when you think about the mental side of your game, what are some things that you're working on, things that you kind of like have that intention to work on and improve the mental game, or things that you have previously struggled with that you now kind of feel like it's at a good spot mentally?
That was a lot of questions in one. So I remember the last thing that you asked. So in my sport, we measure everything every day. We measure the peak powers we hit. We measure our time. We measure our cadence, just everything. And so you're able to compare to previous days, which has been really good for me because I'm quite competitive. So I can always compete with past Kelsey and see the progress that I'm making. But with training, we go deep into a hole where we're just dying, getting through training, maybe not producing that good numbers. And I used to get super frustrated when I go slower than my best before, because obviously I came in and I was PBing every day because I was just so bad initially and then progressed quite quickly. But now the progression has slowed down. I'm not shaving a second off of my times. Now it's like 100th off of a time. And you got to celebrate those little victories. But I was definitely really hard on myself initially, just wondering why I wasn't improving. So I definitely had to take a step back and realize that like I might be in a hole now, but I'm going to like rise up that much better and stronger when I come out of this hole and like taper for a race. And so mentally I had to allow myself to be a little bit slower, a little more tired or a little weaker, but knowing that on that day I gave my best on that day. So that's kind of my mindset, is give your best on that day. Whatever that is, whether you're so slow or so weak, is like all you can ask of yourself is your best. So yeah.
I think a lot of people understand that like it's not just a linear line up, like in terms of progress and whatever it may be, getting better at a sport or in life, anything in life. Like I think people know inevitably that there's dips and rises to everything, but it's still hard when you're on a constant rise and then all of a sudden there's a fall. Like you do personal best, and then all of a sudden you don't get a personal best, and it's like kind of what's wrong with me. Even for myself, knowing that in the back of my mind there's ups and downs to this. When you're on and up, it's still, the downs still suck. Like there's a difference, I think, between knowing that there's downs and like not being okay with the downs. Like I think those two can kind of coincide together.
Yeah, it comes back to when we were saying you have to trust the process. And like 2 weeks out before a race, I am terrible. I'm so slow. My numbers are awful. And I like initially I would obviously start to panic and freak out, like what's going on. And now I've accepted it. If I'm not going bad, then I'm like, oh, what's happening? Maybe the taper's not right. So I like expect to see those numbers now. And that's just come with experience and doing a bunch of races. But yeah, you're going to have ups and downs through your training. And that's just, you're going to hopefully end up being better at the end of it. So
I love it. I was listening to the one interview you did, I think for CTV. I think it was about a year ago when like kind of COVID first happened and the Olympic Games was delayed for the first time. And they had your U of A soccer coach on, Liz Jepson, and she talked about how you're known for kind of rolling with the punches and dealing with that adversity and whatnot. And I'm just intrigued, when you think back to your athletic career, track, cycling, soccer, the whole shebang, is there a moment of adversity that you felt that really kind of defined your mentality and allowed you to shape your mentality to what it is today?
Yeah, actually there was a big moment that it was my 5th year of post-secondary soccer. I was playing at a college in Edmonton called Nate. And like 2 games into the season, I tripped, fell, broke my collarbone. And so I was done I was able to come back for like the provincials and then nationals, but I missed a good chunk of the season. And I remember just like sitting on the couch pouting and being upset. And like, it was my last year, and like sports is literally why I was in school. And I was just angry at myself that when I was healthy, I wasn't doing everything I possibly could to be the best that I could. You know, I was partying on the weekends. I wasn't eating the right food. I was not going on the extra runs, just like little things that like in the moment you're like, yeah, whatever. And then when I was injured, that was all taken away from me. I didn't even have the option to go for a run. And then, so I think my mindset just changed that when I'm healthy, I'm going to take full advantage of it. I'm going to work my ass off and push as hard as I can while I'm healthy and able to, because injuries like this happen all the time. And when it's taken away from you, you realize you took it for granted. And so I think my mindset definitely switched in that point. Where, I mean, after I finished soccer, I had a year where I was playing soccer, but just in like a club league. And this was before I did RBC training grounds. And so I think I just missed sport. And so when I had the chance to like go all in and commit to the sport, and I like had a pathway to get there, I went all in. And whatever happened was going to happen. And I just knew that at the end of it, whether I was successful with track cycling or not, I'd look back and knew I couldn't do anything more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, been the mindset.
It's a perfect example of like, you don't know what you got until it's gone. And you don't, people, I think, lose sight of what they have and the privileges they have in their sporting life, just life in general, whatever it is, until it's taken away for a short period of time. Then it gives you that gratitude, and kind of injuries like that and adversity like that is weird, because in the moment it sucks, but when somebody comes out on the other side, they always say kind of like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though when you think broken collarbone, torn ACL, whatever injury it is, like, it's obviously not the best thing that happened to you physically, but potentially mentally, like you had described there, just that shift in gears mentally of partying on the weekends, not taking things maybe as seriously, to now understanding that time isn't forever and make use of the time that you have it now. It's just such a strange concept, because in the moment it sucks, but afterwards, like, there's nothing better than it.
Yeah. Injury and COVID both force you to take a step back and like appreciate how far you've come, or like see what you're doing right or wrong. And like, just take a step back and see the bigger picture. And so even like with COVID and quarantine and lockdown in Ontario, we were out of the velodrome for 2 months, just like training out of our house. And when we got to the velodrome, I'm like, I'm never taking this for granted again. Just being able to like ride the velodrome and like train in the gym. Like I didn't take it for granted, but I was like, this is the routine. This is just what we do every day. Where now, like, I'm lucky every day I get to go to the velodrome and ride my bike. So,
right. And even I got to imagine that maybe to some degree, having that major injury with your collarbone gave you the tools to then handle COVID better. Like, COVID wasn't the first time where you had to take a step back from sports and have to figure something out, like how to continue to improve. It was your collarbone injury that kind of gave you that new mindset. That's just kind of what came to mind for me there, I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah. I was just, when I broke my collarbone, I was just so desperate to come back and play, and I knew it was my last year. And so, I think being a more mature athlete when I joined cycling, like a lot of people ask like, oh, well, what from soccer translated well to the bike? And I'm like, well, not a lot, but like mentally, I'm just like so grateful for this opportunity, because I was ready to, work a 12-hour shift, like night shifts. Like that was going to be my job, my future. And like, I was okay with that. Like I knew it'd be good money, and like, that's just kind of where I was headed. And then this opportunity presented itself, and I get to be an athlete. Like that's my job, and I get to travel the world. And I never want to take that for granted, because I'm literally living my dream. And I'm so grateful for it, and just always want to like keep myself in check and remind myself like where I was headed and now the opportunity that I have. And so I think that also helps with how much I push myself every day and how much success I have had with this sport.
Yeah, you brought up a good point there, because I had never thought of athletes crossing sports in the perspective of like how much the mental game helps. I've always thought of it as, you take, for example, a baseball player that also can play football, for example, or a baseball player that can also play basketball or something like that. There's obviously like the sports are physical. So as you improve your power and performance and strength in one sport, part of it is going to transfer over to the other sport. But I would argue that probably the mental side of things transfers over easier, like those, like dealing with anxiety, being confident, understanding the process, understanding those ups and downs, all these things, those I think are more easily transferable between sports than something like the physical thing. Like you said, not much transfers over from kicking a ball on the pitch to riding a bike, except maybe some leg power. But the mental side is probably what was the key kind of ingredient to allow you to cross sports over.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of my, not failures, but I didn't achieve as high of a level maybe as I would have liked in soccer. Like I got silver 3 times at nationals losing to the same team, or I got a bronze at nationals, but I've never been a national champion with soccer, or I was never the best on the team, or like the most fit on the team. And so I look back and I see this and I'm like, maybe I could have been better. Maybe I could have, and it's just a lot of what ifs. And so I definitely have brought those thoughts into my track cycling. And I'm like, I don't want any what ifs at the end of the day.
Right.
I'm not going to say, oh, I could have done this if I would have done this, but it's going to be like, I either did it or I didn't. And I put my heart and soul into it. So that's kind of, yeah, soccer mentality was that thought process was brought over into my track cycling.
And it's interesting to me as well, when you compare kind of soccer as a sport to track cycling as a sport. Here you have soccer where you're a group of 22, 23 girls all working together. And now you're track cycling where it's 1v1, like you said, the sprint showdowns. Like, it's such a different mentality, I have to imagine. And I think for some people, when they're in a team sport, there's more opportunities to potentially blame others when things don't go wrong. Like, take the blame off of yourself. When you compare that to individual sport, there's no one to blame really but yourself. I'm intrigued how kind of that transition was for you, and how you managed it, kind of that change from a team sport mentality to an individual sport mentality.
Yeah, that was tough. That took a bit for sure, because I always did team sports. I love sports, but I definitely think going and hanging out with the group of girls that were on my team was like the main thing I looked forward to, or like the bus trips to tournaments and stuff. And so track cycling is an individual sport. You're on the line. You don't have 11 other people or 10 other people behind you to support you if you mess up. Sprint is crazy too, because you make one mistake and it's pretty much done. So the stress and the anxiety and the pressure of being on that line is a lot. And I still am so stressed for racing. I struggled to eat before, and I've never struggled to eat. And it's just crazy how mental it is. And yeah, it definitely has taken a lot of adjusting. Even the team dynamics here, I have some good friends on the team. Like, we're teammates, we're friends. We race against each other. We're competitors as well. So you have to be able to separate that. So like, they're my teammates, but if I'm against them on the line, they're not my teammates anymore. Like, you got to be able to make that switch in your head. And these are all skills that I'm still working on and will continue to work on probably for my whole cycling career.
The one mistake in your done piece is so intriguing, because I think that's unique for just a small subset of sports. When you said that, I was thinking about, sports like hockey, football, baseball. You make one mistake in the first period, the first quarter, the first inning, like, there's still 2 hours, 3 hours of the game left to make it up. Even something like tennis, where it's an individual sport, whether you're playing a 3 or 5 set match, you make one mistake in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to affect the outcome of the match too much. But in a sport like yourself, or, like track and field, for example, one mistake and you like truly are done. And I'm just intrigued. Like, is that something that kind of sticks in your head throughout the race? Like, one mistake and you're done, like that kind of, like, do you like, I'm just
think about it all the time.
I'm intrigued how, like, it's obviously probably not beneficial to think about it all the time, because you don't want to be living in that constant state of fear. But how do you kind of manage the high pressure situations? Like, is there something specifically you tell yourself? Do you try and just turn off your brain when the race starts? How do you manage that?
Yeah, this sport. So yeah, in soccer and basketball or hockey, you make a mistake, you can hustle back, get on defense, and get the puck back, get the ball back. A sport that I really struggled in, which is very different than track cycling, but similar in the sense that if you mess up, it's done, is volleyball, where if you go up and you hit it and you hit it out, it's done. You lost that point. And I remember when I played volleyball in like high school, I struggled so much mentally with that, because not only did I lose the point, I let down the team. And so with track cycling, if I'm on the line and I do the race and I make a mistake, I let down myself. I let down like my coaches, my team, everyone who's helped me get to that point. And it's hard to come back from that. Like at Worlds in 2020, I messed up in semifinals, and I had to race 15 minutes later for bronze. And I was checked out. I was done. I had lost the race before I got on the line. And I think that's the benefits that you get from gaining experience and racing so much, is you go through these races or these moments. Hopefully they're not all at a world championship, but that's where mine was. And I just realized that like I could have went into that race totally different in the final and like tried something different, there was a good chance I wasn't going to beat this girl. She was really good. And, but I could have like learned from it or tried something against her so that maybe if I see her at the Olympics, I'll know how to race her better. But I didn't take that opportunity. And now I've had a solid year and a half to think about that. And so, yeah, like I've just gained so much experience from racing and mostly from losing. And that's the hardest part to accept, is that you'll learn the most when you lose. And so take the lessons from that and grow as an athlete. And hopefully when the races come again, I won't make those same mistakes. So yeah, to summarize all of that, it is hard mentally to mess up and lose and then have to race again and like clear your mind and be back on the line and like have the confidence that like you can win even though you just lost.
That's I can't even imagine how tough that is. I mean, physically it's already tough enough to race 15 minutes later. I guess maybe it depends. It depends how you're kidding. It depends how long the race actually is, but 15 minutes is still not a lot of time to recover physically, but mentally it's even harder to recover in 15 minutes. And if when you think about that kind of 15-minute gap again, if you were to go through something similar, do you feel like you would take kind of a more like active approach to mentally forgetting about the race that you just had and the race you just lost, or maybe more of like a passive approach, kind of like thinking of something positive, or just shut your brain off and try to forget what just happened?
I don't know. I got to learn that. It's like the first kind of experience I had with this, with track cycling, was at Pan Am Games. I had a Kieran race. I messed up and I got fifth. I should have been on the podium. I got fifth. And like old Kelsey would have pouted for at least a week and been like, oh, I should have done this, or, you know, like mad at myself. But I had a race to do the next day. So at least I had like 15 hours to kind of regroup and like come back. And I was able to come back from it. And I ended up winning gold in the next race. And so from there, I was just kind of like, okay, you can be hard on yourself and like expect more, but when it comes down to it and you need to race again, you need to mentally be all there and be ready to go. And so I don't know. I don't have an answer. I am learning every time I race and I lose. So I think kind of just forgetting about the race, maybe if I made a mistake, learning from that, absorbing it, and then focusing on what's next, because each race is different. Each competitor is different. And if I keep thinking about how I lost to Russia, I'm not going to be able to beat Hong Kong, who maybe is a completely different racer. And so I don't know the answer to that. I'm still working on it, but
and it goes back to just the continual process of getting better mentally. I don't think there really is. I think when I think of physical like stats and physical features and physical exercises, there is inevitably like a human limit to those things. There might be a human limit to mentality, but it's like, who knows what that is. And it's just one of those things where I think somebody could be quote unquote like satisfied with their time trials, satisfied with their lifts, whatever it is, satisfied with their run. But it's hard to be, I think, satisfied mentally, because there's always room to improve. Maybe there's a difference between being satisfied and just being content with where you're at. It's just one of those weird things. That's why I'm so interested in the mental side of things, because it's such an unknown. We can see symptoms of a poor mindset. We can see symptoms of a good mindset, but we can't physically see like that mindset. It's just such an intriguing subject, I guess.
Yeah, it's another level. People are constantly training it, I think, and I don't think anyone really has it mastered. So yeah, you got to train it. You have to train it. The mental aspect is so important. You show up and you go through the motions of your sport, you'll be okay at your sport. If you go through and you show up and in your head you're giving your all and you're happy to be there, and you see the benefit of doing maybe like stupid extra mobility or extra core work, but like, you know that this is going to help you on race day, and you mentally just have to want it and be there and enjoy the process, because you can't just go through the motions, especially like in life in general, but definitely at this level of sport.
Has there been any sort of helpful resources? I think of things like podcasts, books, coaches, whoever it may be, helpful resources that has really helped shape your mindset or teach you kind of new tricks and tools for your mindset.
It's funny you say that. I'm not a big podcast person, but I listen to yours. Yeah, in summer 2017, I was a little bit lost. I came back from traveling, did the Southeast Asia for 3 months, and I hadn't signed up yet for RBC training grounds, but I luckily had found a job because I had no job and no money, driving a truck for the summer. And I found out about RBC training grounds and signed up and everything. And I remember just like, I didn't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I searched sport motivation. And this podcast came up called Sport Motivation Podcast. And it's, I don't even know what the guy's name is, but he was an ex-NFL player, and he would just like interview athletes and stuff. And it was just like, the intro was like super intense and like give your best and give 110%, just like little like cliche sayings like this. And I would sit there for 8 hours a day driving this truck and listen to this podcast. And I don't know if it helped me mentally or just like, I don't know, but I would listen to it and I would go for a run at lunch and I would train after work. And I guess I wanted to give 110%. I wanted to be I wanted to give my best every day. And whether that podcast helped or not, I'll never know. But it was just like, I get motivated by that, or like hearing people's stories, or like watching sport movies, things like that. I definitely get motivated from. From the mental side of it, we do have like currently with Cycling Canada, we have psychologists and psychiatrists that work with us. I'm still figuring all that stuff out. I don't know how to talk about it that much, like how you feel on race day. It's hard to describe the feelings unless you're actually feeling it. And so we have those resources and I try and use them. But yeah, I read some books that are like the Mind Gym or Chimp Paradox, just things like that have helped, I think. More so through experience. Yeah.
Who knew that a podcast when you were trucking in 2017 could be the catalyst for all of this?
Yeah. Sport motivation. Yeah.
Listen, Kelsey, I had a blast talking today. I think we talked about a lot of cool sports psychology subjects that I'm sure will help not only other athletes, but just anyone in their life that is looking to improve their mindset at work, in their personal relationships, whatever it is. So I had a blast, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.